Last year was by far my most profitable year ever. So in this video, we're going to cover the most important lessons that I learned last year in e-commerce. I learned all these the hard way, so hopefully you don't have to. The first lesson I learned was thinking way too small. For a while, I was in my own little bubble doing online arbitrage and wholesale just part-time. Then I stumbled upon dropshipping and it really opened my eyes to the earning potential of e-commerce. I was able to scale both Amazon dropshipping and Facebook Marketplace dropshipping way past what I had ever done before. So much so that I literally had to shut my stores off for 2 weeks because I couldn't keep up with the cash flow and I needed to wait to get paid out. A good problem to have, no doubt, but if I'd been thinking bigger from the jump, I wouldn't have faced this issue. I would have been ready when it happened. The second lesson I learned was to not put all your eggs in one basket and not rely solely on one platform for all your revenue. I should have already known this because it's happened to me time and time again on Amazon when I would get suspended and my revenue would come to a screeching halt. But for some reason, that lesson escaped me last year again. I was seeing so much success with Facebook Marketplace and Facebook Shops that I put everything else on the back burner and really jumped into those. And of course, right after I did that, I lost my main Facebook account and about 20K in consistent monthly profit just evaporated. But if I had been scaling Amazon dropshipping and other websites at the same time, it really wouldn't have been that big of a deal. The next lesson I learned was that dropshipping on some platforms, as good as the money was, ultimately just ended up being another high-paying job. I had to spend night and day listing products, doing product research, doing customer service, and fulfilling orders. And even when I hired a bunch of VAs, I still had to manage them and put out fires consistently. Don't get me wrong, the money was great, but losing my main Facebook Marketplace was definitely a blessing in disguise because it ultimately let me realize moving forward that I mainly want to focus on businesses that are that scalable, but also more hands-off. Example of these that I'm really bullish on moving forward are both Amazon dropshipping and Etsy dropshipping. Because once you set them up, they're about 99% hands-off. The software manages everything for you. Again, don't get me wrong, you can make great money on Facebook Marketplace, and I still highly recommend it for a lot of people. But once you scale past about 10K in monthly profit, it becomes really time-consuming to manage. Lesson number 4 is a simple one, and it's to be successful in any business, you have to be both willing and able to adapt. There's going to be situations where a major change might affect your business in some way, and how you're able to solve that problem and adapt will determine how successful you can be long-term. Just like Darwin said, it isn't necessarily the strongest that always survive, it's the ones with the ability to adapt. Lesson number 5 is reiterating the 80-20 principle, which is true in any business. Now, I'm constantly testing new platforms to dropship on, mainly to see for myself and report back to you guys, and also so I know which ones are worth it and which ones aren't. And the reality is there's many platforms that you can dropship and make money on, but that doesn't always mean you should. Sometimes you're better off focusing on a few. Notice I did not say one, I said a few, because more isn't always better. The reality is we only have a finite amount of time and energy every single day, and often you'll get a lot further by consolidating that time and energy into the 20% of things that are producing 80% of the results. Lesson number 6 is to pick a few good mentors and ignore everyone else. Because ultimately, listening to too many people will just confuse you and you'll end up pulled in a million different directions. This is perhaps the biggest mental revelation of the year for me, and I learned it from the top G himself. The biggest hurdle that almost all of us face is arrogance. Many people think that they know way more than they do, even though they don't have any of the receipts to prove it. I do this too. Often I catch myself being closed off and not listening to people that are much smarter and much more successful than me. But the smartest people in the world are aware of just how much they don't know. Confucius said, knowledge is to know the extent of one's ignorance, and this is true in e-commerce, but it's also true in life in general. And often when you're seeing success, that is exactly the time that you need to fight the I know it all bug, because that's precisely when you get stuck in your ways. Lesson number 8 is that in order to scale, you need to be able to let go and find talented people to help you. Hands down, the best thing that I did last year was master outsourcing. It allowed me to buy back a lot of my time that I was spending in my business, so I could then spend that newfound time improving my processes, doing more R&D, and scaling in other ways. I also realized that I wasn't the only smart and capable person in the world, and that if I could just build systems on how to implement specific tasks, I could then hire a competent VA to implement it. Don't get me wrong, there's still some things that only you'll be able to do, but trust me when I say it's a lot less than you think. Finally, lesson number 9 is that what you don't know is costing you a lot of money. For example, I was finally able to get tax exempt on a lot of my suppliers, which meant another 5 to 10% profit on every single order, which if you do the math is huge. I probably left 50K plus on the table not knowing this before I implemented it. And it pains me to give this second example, but it's the unfortunate reality. I was also able to find cheaper VAs that could do the same jobs by outsourcing specifically to the Philippines. Prior to that, I had hired from Fiverr and then brought those people on full time if they were good. And the people I hired were absolutely fantastic. The only issue, which I didn't know at the time, was that I could find people for literally 20% of that cost. For about a year plus, I had people working for $10 an hour, others at $6 an hour, and others at $8 an hour. But if I just found people from the Philippines from the start, I literally would have netted at least $60,000 last year in net profit. Those are 2 prime examples of how what you don't know is costing you a lot of money. The key lesson here is always be learning and never just accept something at face value. Always be trying to improve. So those are some key lessons that I learned in e-commerce last year. I really hope they help. If you got any value from this video whatsoever, please give it a like. I really appreciate it. Until next time.